Hey everyone, it's Tim from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today. You may know of the farm, which is Harmony Farms. You may know of her. Her name is Grace, but most all of you know of her as the Shepherdess. Join us today on Linessa Farms as we conduct a candid interview with Grace from Harmony Farms, our friend, the Shepherdess. I am a busy guy and you are probably a busy gal, and I don't know how much time you get to watch YouTube videos, but I don't get much time to watch YouTube videos at all. So I don't know a whole lot about you. I know you're very popular. I see you pop up a lot. So tell me, how long have you been doing this, and how did this happen? How did this get started for you?
Yeah, so I am a digital marketer by trade. 2020 was when I really got into farming. And so I came to farming from no agricultural background whatsoever. But I saw a resource and I saw the need, number one, to convert it into a food source. 2020 happened and a lot happened, and a lot has happened since. And so there was that initial concern. And so I just took it. I hit the ground running. Initially, it was my goal to start with beef. Hated sheep, but wanted to raise beef. I got into reading this book by Joel Salatin. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or any of your followers are, but it put in me the understanding of pasture management and really how it could be applied in a profitable way to agriculture. And I teased that was the book on beef that turned me into a shepherdess. That was my first exposure to agriculture of any sorts. And at that point in time, the sheep did not belong to me. We had just moved as a family from Austin, San Antonio area to a really rural East Texas. And the land was something we were looking to just be on, just because we liked the country a little bit more than the city life we had previously. But when we moved there, we initially bought a flock of sheep, wanting to maintain an agricultural exemption. At this point in time, I wanted nothing to do with farming or agriculture. I was working my job. And we bought sheep, or my parents bought sheep at that point in time, kind of just thinking they'd be like a mini cow, something small to just passively maintain this tax exemption. Well, I mean, something about sheep. There's not a whole lot that's passive about them. And cows are honestly a lot easier. But anyways, we had a lot of struggles as beginner livestock farmers, a lot of struggles with raising sheep, learning the ropes of it. And so that's really where I wanted nothing to do with sheep. But that regenerative sort of format eliminated a lot of the problems that we were struggling with in the sheep arena. Internal parasites being one of them. It was a really difficult situation because we live in a really high rainfall, high humidity area. And basically within just a couple of months of implementing a lot of these processes, a lot of the problems with sheep disappeared. And I thought, okay, I can do this. I think I can do this. And number two is, I did mention I have a business background, and jumping into agriculture, I had no time for just another passive hobby. I didn't really love it, or didn't really have a burning in me to, I knew we needed more farmers, but I didn't want it just to be a fun thing. I wanted to make it a really serious business. I started crunching the numbers and realized that I could make about 4 times more on sheep than I could with cows. And at that point in time, I said to my parents, I want to buy this flock, and I paid for the fencing they had just installed on the 30 acres, and I worked out a lease agreement and hit the ground running with a sheep for profit operation.
There you go. And how long have you been in business now?
So 2021 was my first livestock sale, and I just had my third one. Good. So the neat thing about sheep is that they cash flow really fast.
Yes. So are you running primarily Dorpers or Dorper cross, or?
Yeah, 100% Dorper. They're purebred. They're full Dorper, and that's what I'm running.
Good deal. We've brought in some Dorpers into our flock this last year. We have a lot of different breeds because we have lots of followers with different breeds, and it makes it extremely difficult because we're running multiple breeds, and they all have their own thing. And a lot of people will talk to us about sheep, and they'll say, "Oh, you make it seem easy, or you make it seem." And we talked about it to one of our friends the other day, and I said, I think a lot of it is just getting in tune with the sheep. I think you get better at identifying when something's wrong. You're a little quicker on it, and that's like the name of the game, right? Like, if there's a problem, you better get on it like today. There's not that window of forgiveness that you may have with cattle or some other livestock. I think people underestimate sheep. I think they think it. I don't know what they think. I think people tend to think they're a little bit easier to handle than they are. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, or I can only speak for us, but being as beginners in livestock, we thought size equated to ease. We're like, okay, this is smaller, so it's going to be easier. And that just wasn't entirely true.
Yeah. And the other thing is, there is no, and this is probably like, I wouldn't say it's my mantra, but I bring it up a lot, is that there is no like one size fits all. It is like you really, really have to look at so many different variables. What works for me here in Indiana may not work for you in Texas. You have a totally different climate to where you're going to have different worm pressure than I will. You're going to have different coccidia pressure than I will. You have different commodities at different prices than I do. So I tell people, I'm like, you need to become a very good consumer of information and kind of whittle down what works for you and what doesn't. I always tell people, be extremely cautious of the kind of the armchair expert that's just like, oh, this is all you have to do. Like, I learn something new all the time. And I learn new things from every person I talk to. I learn something new that I can take away. Sometimes it works for me. Sometimes it doesn't. Looking back on the past few years, all the social media and everything aside, just on the farming aspect, what would you say was your number one obstacle that you had to overcome? And then I guess the follow-up question to that is going to be, if you had to go back and start fresh again, is there any major change that you would make?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really falls in line with what you just talked about, getting into agriculture and reading sort of this regenerative format. I love it. It is absolutely perfect. But there are some things that certain regenerative farmers would never do that I do. One of them being the conventional management of worms, something I have a huge tug of war with a lot of my regenerative friends. And it ties back to what you're saying. Get in touch with the challenges that you're having. And it's okay if you formulate a series of answers that is going to work for you. The end game is animals well raised and hopefully in a fashion that is economically profitable. There's nothing economically profitable about 7 out of 10 sheep dying of worms because you want to use an herbal dewormer in a place that doesn't necessarily accommodate that. Right. I had to come to that. And I stand in a huge amount of confidence with that. There are things I do to make it better. There are things I do to use less of those things, but I make no apologies for what I need to do to take care of my animals, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I have that conversation with working in a hospital with patients. I have that conversation with patients all the time. I say, hey, look, we are going to hope for the best and we are going to prepare for the worst. I don't like using chemical warmers any more than the next person. We use some copper sulfate, but here's the deal with that. Copper sulfate is super dangerous stuff. Like, I cringe when I talk to people about how to worm with copper sulfate, because if they don't follow directions exactly, if they decide they're going to deviate, there is no room for forgiveness with that. There's plenty of things out there that are organic and all natural that can kill an animal deader than a doornail right now. There's some medications that are very, very gentle and have a very broad treatment window. Again, you got to figure out what works for you. And I think, on some small acreage, it may not be feasible to go all natural. I'm all about trying. I'm all about being as natural as you can. But you have to take the good with the bad, you know?
Mhm.
So as far as referring back to changes you would have made, any major changes you would have made if you could start it all over, if you could start from scratch now?
I probably would have just taken it a little bit more easy on myself with respect to a lot of that initial trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Mhm.
I would have probably mentally been easier on myself for the adjustments that I did need to make, and just said it's okay. Kind of take it to the next chapter. One of the things I struggle with a lot is wanting to see the whole, like, I want to see the beginning to the end of this season. You know, I want to be
Right.
able to plan. But it was something that somebody just sat down and they said to me, sometimes you're just going to have a solution for today, especially when you're working with like living animals.
Mhm.
You're not going to have the solution for next week. You're going to have the solution for today. And that, in order to mentally get past some of this stuff, that is where you need to kind of find some peace. And so I think I would tell myself that at the very beginning.
Right.
If you've found all the solutions you need for today, just have a good night's sleep.
Exactly. And there are losses just baked into the cake when it comes to raising livestock. We hate it. I know you hate it. Everybody hates it. Every year we're going to lose a few animals, and that is there's so much going on there that we don't know, that we just don't have access to, and or maybe there's congenital defects or things like that that you can't get around. Lord, we've had animals that were great today, and then tomorrow you go out and they're laying there dead, and you think, oh my goodness, what? And that's a tough thing to handle. And we look at, we're running 100 animals, and we lose one, that bites, a little bit. But when you have 3 and now you lose one, it stings a little bit more. I think people beat themselves up a little bit more than they should. The other thing that I've noticed, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, boy, I see a lot of people that get dumped on. And what I mean by that is we get a lot of calls from people that are like, the neighbor farmer gave me this sheep and now it's dying. What do I do? I think there is value in being critical about the livestock you purchase. I don't know if you come out ahead. What do you think about that? If you're cheap, garbage in is garbage out kind of a situation, it can be.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a free animal. Never take a free animal.
I know. You will pay for it. And I think culling's important too. I have my favorites on the farm, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to get rid of you. I like you. You have a name, and and it's like it's hard. But that just goes with any business. If you want to be successful, at some point you're going to have to make hard decisions, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it will. And what I'm finding with sheep is that it's kind of like pruning a tree when you are working with your flock. When you get rid of the bad ones, it feels like it just comes back even stronger, whether it's with a higher lambing percentage or whatever. And so that's also something that's really, maybe I would have gone back and told myself that it's going to hurt to get rid of these 5 sheep, but next year you will probably notice a higher level of productivity within your flock
Right.
if you do make those hard decisions up front.
When you look at finances, it's been very strange for us over the last year, 2 years. You guys were going through a drought in Texas, which drove hay prices very high. Individuals from our area were shipping hay out to you. Mm-hmm. So now we've got a drop in demand. Supply is dropping, or pardon me, we had a drop in supply. Demand remained constant. So of course, where price is going to go. So it's hurt everybody. Commodity prices have seemed to go up, but we haven't seen a huge jump in our sale barn prices. Mm-hmm. So it seems like things are starting to level back out here. What does it look like there? Mm-hmm. Are you leveling back out, or?
Finally. Yeah, we are finally just leveling back out with respect to the hay prices. We're getting our first cutting in here probably in the next couple of weeks, and it's just now getting back to our normal prices. But last year was an absolute mess as far as costs go. Now, my system is a really low input system, and the way that I was able to rotate the animals and keep an eye on the pasture, I constantly had sort of an inventory. I understood where I was at, a month before I ran out. I knew I was going to run out in a month. And so it allowed me to make some of those hard decisions before I was up against it. And that's really what I was encouraged by, and seeing the way the system kind of played through a crisis. Yeah, I did have to make hard decisions. Yeah, I did have to get rid of animals I didn't want to, and I had to pay a little more for inputs in the last year. But thankfully, it was not absolutely devastating on that front.
Do you think you'll be more cautious before bringing your numbers back up? I have a certain amount of apprehension. I'm like, I might wait this out. Where are you at? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was kind of a unique situation. At the beginning of last year, I got a little gutsy and I bought cows, which, we just talked about how I wanted cows initially, and I ran them alongside my sheep herd. So I guess the short answer is absolutely yes. The short answer to that is my plan at the present is to not increase stocking rate until I can really get a feed reserve of sorts in place that will be able to float me through a crisis identical to what we experienced. So once I have that feed reserve, then I will increase my numbers no matter what my pasture does, no matter what happens there. At the beginning of last year, thankfully my sheep flock did not suffer. I'm still kind of under numbers there. But what made it really difficult for me last year was I chose to undertake a small cow herd at the onset of the worst drought in 100 years. So I had to pretty much get rid of all of my cowgirl dreams through that. Right. But the sheep flock, it'll be a slow and steady build as I kind of build my reserve.
Good deal. So managing everything, when you went into this initially, did you intend to, do social media and things like that? Was it kind of in your blood because that's kind of what your background was? So you said, hey, this is what I know. If I'm going to run a business, I might as well run this alongside of it. It just makes good sense. When you look at that, how do you manage that? I've got 13,000 subscribers, 14,000 subscribers, and I probably spend 3 hours a day just trying to be the best person I can be. Where are you at? Are you happy? Are you losing your mind, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. It cycles as far as that goes. But to the original question, I knew going into this, I wanted to ultimately make it a full-time income for myself. With my background in marketing, I knew I had to basically juxtapose everything I used to sell apparel or everything I used to market a brand. I knew I needed to transpose that directly into a farming setting, because one of my thoughts originally, and one of my my pillars of my business model, was that I don't know how much I can make this if I have to rely on the commodity market or sale barns exclusively. I need to be able to direct to consumer meat for a premium, or I need to be able to direct to consumer my sheep for a premium. So from the onset, I just basically utilized those marketing skills and transposed them. And so what it's done is it's allowed me to diversify in a lot of ways. I have that website. And of course, at that website, I sell my sheep, where people come and they see, why are these things special? Why should I actually pay a little bit more for these than I would at my local sale? And on that website, while I have the captive attention of people looking for my sheep, I thought, okay, there are a couple of other products I could offer people alongside this. Diversify my income streams, increase my income opportunity using those same people. And then in the social media realm, I knew as well that I have to find people. I could go out and spend a lot of time off farm to do that, but I could also use the internet and social media to do it. So it was probably, just to answer that in a short way, I just knew exactly what needed to be done to sell conventional products, to sell static products. And as I moved over to the farming realm, I just sort of transferred every ounce of what I knew of marketing to it.
There is a huge demand for real education, and I purposely said the word real education. There's different media products out there. There's some things that you watch and you're like, this is fun. I enjoy watching this. It's a show, you travel from point A to point B. And then there's, hey, I watched this and I learned something. And that's the feedback that we get from our people is they say, I want to watch something that when I travel through this video with the host from point A to point B and I'm done, I learned something. And I think that's beneficial to the host as well, because now you've got an evergreen product that people can come back to and they can say, you know what, you put it out today, and if it's good quality education, it's going to be just as relevant in maybe, with some changes within a few years. So that's the videos of yours that I've watched. That's what I see. I see, okay, we have a topic, we have a plan. This is what you're going to learn, and you deliver on that by the end of the video. And I think that's a huge thing. I get imposter syndrome sometimes. You probably know what that is. And it's nothing against anybody. It's a natural thing. It's where it's like, okay, it's stressful. I want to make sure that I'm giving people good, up-to-date, peer-reviewed scholarly information, and that's always changing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's different depending on where you're at. When you're doing your research and you're looking for information, how do you go about doing that? I guess let me back up and say, when you develop an idea for your next video, how long is that process? Can you kind of walk us through what that process looks like?
Definitely. So when I develop an idea, it's interesting because most of the time it comes as a result of me wanting to know something, initially not knowing it, and finding the answer for myself. And so basically it starts with a question within me. It's kind of a journalistic approach, I guess. And I just begin asking the questions that are coming out of me as I desire to know more about this particular topic. I'll jot those down, and obviously the sources, one time I quoted Wikipedia on one of my videos and people were like, okay, Wikipedia. So you need to really double down on your sources and make sure that they are good and reputable. But basically, mine has just been a matter of asking questions and presenting the answers to people in a way that's digestible. As far as the other stuff, I think I totally understand what you're talking about, the imposter syndrome. One of the things when I first started my channel, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to be honest with people, whether we're having struggles or whatever. Number one is honesty. And number two is just tell them what happened. Mm-hmm. And in those places, I mean, yeah, sometimes it leaves you in a place where you have to tell people what happened. But when the fact checkers come, there's nothing more than really what happened. So those are kind of the two things for me.
I think people appreciate that. I posted a video. I had a horrible experience one time. I just wasn't thinking. We have high tensile fence on our one of our farms. I got some lambs. I backed them up to a gate. I let them into a small paddock, and they proceeded to head for Mexico. They ran right through the high tensile wire, and I looked at it after the fact, and I was like, "Oh, you dummy! Like I should have seen this coming." They couldn't see the wire until they got right up on it, and they ran right through it. Well, I made a video about that, and I just said, "Hey, I made this mistake. Don't do what I did. Keep this in mind if you're going to use single strand, double strand, whatever. If it's not a physical barrier." And man, I got flamed. Holy smokes. And that was my first experience with really, really getting flamed on social media. And after I digested it for a few days, I was like, nah, it doesn't matter. And then I've learned that I'm going to get flamed by certain people regardless. Mm-hmm. I actually have like troll followers, which I'm pretty proud of. Like they're consistently, and I kind of laugh to myself. I'm like, man, you're watching my videos. Like, thanks for watching, but it goes with it. I think, for whatever reason, I would say 99% of my viewers are super friendly and super nice. I would assume you have the same experience.
Yeah. And I tell myself, because, you do have those trolls, but, and sometimes I'll get 2 or 3 bad comments in a row. But I said to myself, okay, before I complain about this 3% or this 1%, I'm going to go and say thank you to everyone who has been an encouragement to me. And as I think about how much time it would take to thank those people who genuinely show their support, I'm like, you know what? It's not even worth paying attention to that 1%. That's kind of what I have to refocus on, because that's the reality of it.
Right. So what is the plan? Do you have a 5-year goal, a 10-year goal? If I'm talking to you in 10 years, what are we going to be talking about?
You're hopefully going to be talking about Dorper sheep and the expansion of my flock. Now I'm at about half capacity right now. It's my goal to ultimately have 80 of the best quality Dorper breeding ewes in the nation. I am actually have some plans in the works with respect to how that's actually going to happen on a legitimate scale. So hopefully you'll be talking to me about sheep. And I really have a heart to encourage people in ways that they can diversify on farm. There's so many people who want to make a full-time out of farming, but both you and I both know that it takes a little bit of something different in 2023. And I really want to encourage people in business models or things that they could start off farm that will allow them to stay on farm, earn all the money they need to earn that income, and be able to manage their farm as well.
So what kind of resources do you offer for individuals that are getting started? So if I was coming to you today not knowing anything, what would our conversation look like? What can you help me with, and how do I get on board with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would first point you to shepherdess.com, where I have just a slew of free worksheets as well as the videos. It's going to really build out. I'm very transparent about my process in building out my farm business. So I have videos that cover my farm business plan. I have templates and worksheets that will allow you to basically follow along and create your own. Basically just asking yourself questions up front that are going to set the trajectory for where you're going into whatever your length of time is. 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, my goal to be full-time on the farm. And then beyond that, if people want to go deeper and they want to actually know from a marketing standpoint every single thing that I've done in my farm business, they can do that. And I have marketing classes for building websites, YouTube strategy, Instagram, Facebook, and the like. So I would start with the free stuff. Don't give me any of your money until you have watched every video on my YouTube channel and used all the free worksheets.
Do you feel that the information that you have out there is interchangeable? So if an individual wanted to have 2 animals, 10 animals, 100 animals, you think that's fairly user-friendly?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm on a small scale myself. I'm 30 acres and everything, it's my anthem, basically. Everything that you want to do on a large scale, find the smallest way possible to begin implementing that. You're going to save yourself a lot of financial difficulty, a lot of emotional strain by starting small. And so that's absolutely my anthem. And my answer is absolutely yes.
Good. Yeah, I really think that paperwork and keeping track of things is extremely underrated. I think that you have to have records. When we do our culling in the spring, I almost like to do a blind record cull first, leave the names and the emotion out of it and just look at the numbers and say, okay, this is what's happening and this is what's not happening. And keeping track of where your money's going. That's a huge deal. Mm-hmm. And you have to count your time for something, right? If I'm going to put my time into this that I could be utilizing to do something else, is that making sense as well? Do you advise people to account for their time, or what are your thoughts on that for getting started? I mean, you're going to have to invest time, whether you want to or not, right?
You will. But to be honest, you'll find ways to make it work. I don't encourage a lot of you've got to make sure you're making money even if you pay yourself $18 an hour. I don't encourage a lot of that up front because, to be honest, How many hours a day do each of us spend watching TV? Okay, stop watching TV, start a farm. For me personally, I was spending, I think it was like 3 hours a day at a local gym before I started farming. Well, I quit that and I just put that towards farming. So think more in terms of those things. How can you make this a lifestyle and supplement what you're doing in your lifestyle to begin sort of side hustling this farming thing?
I consider what I do to be my hobby and another job. A lot of people at work are like, man, how do you do it? Like, how do you, and I'm like, I don't I don't golf. I don't hunt. I don't watch TV. This is what I do, but I like it. So for me, I'm like, it's fine. You know, I get enjoyment out of it. And so I think it's a matter of priority. It's like, okay, what's important? What's not? And, you know, when you're talking about time, I encourage people all the time. I tell them, go outside and find one thing you can fix that will make your life a little easier on the farm. It might be a latch on a gate. It might be a board that you've been needing to put up that you haven't. Like, you can find something. If you look hard enough, you can find something every day that can make your life a little easier. Oh, yeah. Would you say so?
Absolutely. Last year, I did something exactly like what you're talking about. I spent about a solid month. I took a month off YouTube. I did very minimal anything else, but I installed a system on my farm that basically took my workload from an hour and a half a day down to an hour in this specific task. And over the course of that year, I mean, just the return on investment has been huge. So I'm just echoing and saying amen to what you just said. Put in the time.
So when you took that month off, did that scare you to death? Being a marketing, a lifetime ago, I graduated with a degree in marketing and finance. Trust me, a lifetime ago. But having you tell me that, like, I took a month off, like, that just scares me to death.
Yeah.
I assume it was one of those things where you were just like, look, I need it. I'm doing it. And do you think it helped? Did it make things better in the long run?
Yeah, so it did. It was scary. But number one, I let people know exactly what I was doing. And I told them, this is why I'm doing it. So again, it inserted a little bit of realism into the reality that you can't do it all if you're going to do it all yourself. But also, I think a lot about my audience or about my brand. And I think if it's not strong enough to sustain a 1 month break when I really need it, there are deeper problems than me taking that 1 month break. So it was really, really good to see. And I took that 1 month break, and it ended up being, again, it was like pruning that tree. You initially think that lopping off that branch is going to kill it. Well, it ended up propelling a lot of growth just by having the opportunity to recenter, refocus, and recharge. So if anybody's watching this who is a YouTuber or runs a side hustle in marketing or what have you, let people know you're taking a break and just take it if you need it.
Yeah, because life's going to happen whether you want it to or not. Some unfortunate things are going to happen, you know, or good things are going to happen. I mean, you can have a baby, you could have a loss in the family. Like, it doesn't always have to be doom and gloom. And there's going to be times that, you know, your hierarchy of importance in your life is going to come up and take precedence, and you just do what you got to do. Yeah. So do you get many people that ask you about starting in YouTube? Do you get many people that inquire with you about, hey, I want to start my own farming channel? And what do you tell them? Yeah, I tell them this is my most important piece of advice. The lifespan of a YouTuber, no matter how successful, no matter how viral they go, the average lifespan is 7 years from start to peak popularity to finish. So you need to have a really deliberate goal with that channel to not just accumulate 1 million views, but to use it as a tool to build into a platform of your own, whether it's your own website, your own newsletter, etc. Because the success on YouTube is extremely fleeting, no matter how large it grows. So that's what I tell people as well. But also, I tell them it's probably one of the best ways to connect with people, to build trust with them, is if they can see your face, if they can see your farm, make a video, put it out there. And you really don't have anything to lose by doing that. Right. We fell into this completely by accident. I had customers that were asking me the same questions over and over and over. And it's kind of funny. I told my wife, I was like, I don't have time for this. Like, I don't have time to answer these same questions all the time. So I'm just going to make a video. Right. And so I made a video, and now I spend way more time on it than I ever did. But yeah, why do you think, I know the natural degradation of things and how things entropy, right? Things fall apart. But as far as YouTube channels, do you think the shelf life on a YouTube channel is because the host gets burned out? Do you think the audience gets burned out, or do you think it's kind of a mix of the two? Do you think there's anything you can do to prevent it?
That's a really good question. And I think it doubles back to what we were talking about in the kinds of videos that you make. You use the word evergreen, and that's if you search evergreen content on YouTube, you're going to find a slew of videos on how to make evergreen content. But I think the channels that have the most longevity are the ones that answer legitimate questions. If you've got a huge audience that's just coming to look at you because you're cute or because you're entertaining, sometimes you're not going to be cute and you're not going to be entertaining. That has a very short shelf life. But if you have people coming to you for genuine levels of information, that's where your channel has the capacity to grow into a brand or to have more longevity. So yes, I'd say yes.
What do you think about what we're doing right now? What do you think about interviewing? Do you interview much? Is that a new thing for you, or have you been interviewing all along? And I apologize for not knowing that.
Yeah, I've done interviews since the beginning. So one of the strategies, if you guys want to get into some YouTube strategy, is to interview someone who basically is at the top of whatever niche you want to be in. So having read Joel Salatin's book first, I said, I wonder if I could get an interview with Joel Salatin to start my channel. And that was the first interview I got. So yes, interviewing is a really, really big thing. It's kind of got to be done strategically, because unless you have the right audience for it, sometimes people don't want to spend a whole hour watching an interview. So what I'll do is I will put the whole interview on my podcast store, and people will just plug and go and listen to that 1 hour. But on my YouTube, I will break it down into like 5 minutes. I'll ask a specific question, which will encompass a whole topic. And then I'll put that on my YouTube channel. The attention span on YouTube is much shorter than in the podcast store. Oh, yeah.
When we do our interviews, a lot of times I'll post the long format, but then I'll break it down into chunks as well. Would you consider yourself a pretty private person? It seems like the people... Like, I'm not interested in people knowing a lot about my personal life. This is kind of something completely separate from my personal life. I don't think my personal life's very interesting. Do you sometimes wish people knew you better? Do you feel like people would understand me more if they knew me better? Or do you feel like you've got a happy medium?
I think I have a happy medium. I don't want people to know everything about me, but I feel like I give them enough to really genuinely connect. I'm probably more the person, though, especially with my videos, and anybody who's watching this who's watched my videos, they'll know I'm pretty transparent. So I don't have too big of a problem, sharing things. But the internet is a weird place, and the world is a weird place. So that's another thing I would tell is just don't, what's that term? It's not putting all your eggs in one basket. Don't lay yourself totally out there.
Yeah. And I'd like to think, I'm probably the same person. If somebody watched me on here, they'd be like, yeah, that's Tim. That's how Tim is. I don't think I could do it. Like, I don't think I could. Acting would not be for me. Like, I could not sustain myself. It would be exhausting for me to like try to be someone that I'm not. And I definitely think that could burn you out. I have a very good support structure behind the scenes. I wish sometimes the people that helped me got more credit. I've had people in my past growing up that really, I don't want to ramble here, but it's all a legacy. And I've used that term before. The things that were given to me by my support group when I was young are coming out in my work now. When I interview people, I encourage some of the older farmers that I interview. I'm like, your grandkids will be able to watch this. I was like, that information that your dad gave you is now going to get shared with thousands and thousands of people. So sometimes I feel like my support group doesn't get enough accolades, but I still have a really good support group, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do without them. Are you in the same boat, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point about actually encapsulating it in a video. A lot of my first videos really covered those first people that poured into me with respect to their knowledge or giving me the opportunity to be at their farm. So some of my first videos were farm tours, and it was just a way sort of for me to give back to what they poured into me. And it's like you said, I made a video, and it's not a super popular one on my channel, but it was an 82-year-old guy. And he said, I think I'm going to play this at my funeral. And so it was really neat, and it was a way to kind of give back and track that support group.
Do you have individuals that you are your go-to folks that you reach out to when you have problems?
Yeah, one of them would be my sister. She's on the channel quite often. She is who I call the chicken lady. And she's just like, she'll just very practically walk me through issues and say, no, remember you had this problem last year and we're going to get through this. And my family is just like, they're everything. One of the things is that not everybody wants to be on YouTube. And so there is that privacy barrier, but I could not even do it without my family.
My wife will come on every once in a while, and she doesn't love it. And that's okay. But she does like all the bookkeeping. She's out there every morning. She's out there every night. And I'm like, you don't want to do? And she's like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for people to have their family on board when they get started doing this. Don't you?
I do. I juxtapose that with the reality that when I said I wanted to be a farmer, most of my family was like, you want to do what? Because of my background. So it wasn't something that I had some people who were like, okay, I see what you're doing is a good idea. And then I had a lot of skeptics as well. So ultimately what happened was I knew that I just had to do this. And so what I did was on the smallest scale possible, I started to implement some of my ideas. And those skeptics began to see firsthand and really warm up. And so those skeptics are now like my right hand biggest cheerleaders in this. Mm-hmm. So I want to like balance that. Yes, you have to have support, but yes, sometimes it doesn't come immediately. Show them what you got going on. Show them what you're doing. Do it small and do it well, and then they might warm up.
So if an individual wants to buy livestock from you, what does that process look like, and what's the time of year that somebody would want to contact you? Is there a good time, a bad time?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So April is when I host my livestock sales. I did my third one yesterday, and we sold out. So get in touch in April at shepherdess.com. And then what I do is you'll see at shepherdess.com right now is sign up for first dibs on 2024 livestock. You just want to make sure that you're on that mailing list, because weeks in advance of being able to buy, I'll send out and make sure you guys know exactly what's happening, so you have the chance to get it if you want it.
Good deal. When people come to your farm and they're brand new and getting started, do you try to encourage them to start with a few?
Start small. Small. But you can think big. So my anthem is think big, start small, don't quit. There is no limit to the goals you can set. I mean, set huge goals, but just find the smallest way possible, the smallest next step towards that goal. And don't quit. Don't quit, because it's going to take some stamina, whether you start big or start small.
Yeah, I think going through a season is great. If you can do it, to where you start off with some animals that are maybe going to have offspring, go through that season, get your feet wet, right. Learn, and even with that being said, there's always going to be something that comes up that you're just like, oh, great. Like, I didn't know this was coming up. Sometimes my animals get sick and I fix them, and I don't know how I fixed them. I'm like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try this. And then, things get nutty.
I think there are a lot of people out there who do want to do what we're doing. And I think there are a lot of barriers to entry, but I just want to echo that: start small. And whatever resource is in front of you, it may look like you changing your expectations. Maybe you're watching this and you want to raise sheep, and that's your dream. Well, maybe your property, better for rabbits, better for chickens, whatever it is. But use whatever resource is in front of you to get going, and research what is going to match that resource rather than chasing your dreams. I think we're all told to chase our dreams. Well, if I was chasing my dreams right now, I'd have cows, and I probably wouldn't be making any money. But be flexible. Match your resource with a profitable option for that resource, and go for it. Go for it.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this interview as much as we did. We look forward to speaking with the Shepherdess again in the future. Again, make sure that you reach out to her, check out her website, follow her on social media, and if you're looking for Dorpers, she just might be the person you need to talk to. Please do keep her in mind, and again, we appreciate her time and agreeing to speak with us. I'm Tim from Linessa Farms, specialty in heirloom livestock. Thanks for joining us again today, and I look forward to seeing all of you again next time.